Let's bring in Jonathan Jones. He was a winner. Perfect sweep tonight. You're 3 for 3 in your bets. How's a winner? B-Mac is always a winner. You got that smile. You win on everything. Our 2-time Super Bowl champ. All right, B-Mac, I'll start with you. They won it, then they didn't win it, then they won it, then they didn't win it. I mean, you guys are kidding. Justin Tucker hits a field goal with 30 seconds to go, and the Ravens think they win. Carlson comes back and hits one to send it to overtime. This was wild. What's the headline coming out of this thing?
The NFL is back. If you didn't have a dog in the race, you enjoyed outstanding, entertaining, competitive football. I was watching from start to finish just like you guys, and listen, I got my money's worth. Even though it was free, I got my money's worth. I really enjoyed it. But let's keep it real. 2 outstanding teams tonight going toe-to-toe. They left it all on the line. And the deciding factor, EK, Jonathan, was turnovers. The team that played the cleanest football won this ball game. And they both had some costly mistakes. But the big critical mistakes for the Baltimore Ravens, primarily Lamar Jackson not protecting the football, led to a loss for the Baltimore Ravens. And you look at how battle-tested the Raiders have been. I can tell you this much. Based on how poorly they played on the defensive side a year ago, they changed the coaching staff, the coordinators. They made some adjustments, made some personnel adjustments as well. And they can get after the passer in today's game. Last year, that was not an identity for them. But now, looking at the defensive mentality, the defensive DNA, they have really changed the culture on that side and playing against one of the more athletic, elusive quarterbacks in the game today. They made life difficult for Lamar Jackson.
JJ, we talked about the idea that Baltimore had injuries at the running back position and in their secondary. They get beat for a touchdown with nobody around in overtime, secondary. And the reason why the Raiders got the ball was because the backup to the backup to the backup who had never played before was in on pass protection and didn't really give you a good umph, which allowed Carl Nassib to strip sack and get the ball out on Lamar Jackson. So ultimately, did the injuries kind of cost the Ravens the game here?
Well, it did, and that's what happens when you play 60 minutes, when you play 65 minutes, when you play 70 minutes. Those things are going to happen. The league, the parity in this league is too great for you to get by with the backup to the backup to the backup at running back, to lose Marcus Peters, to lose Jimmy Smith, at least for this game where he was inactive, and think that you can get by against a team that's going to be competing for a playoff spot. They got by, the Baltimore Ravens did, with their run game in the first half. And listen, credit to Tyson Williams. Latavius Murray came in the second half, sort of spelled him, but really in those sort of pass protection situations, it needed to be Latavius Murray, the money running back, rather than Tyson Williams, with all due respect to him. And then when you look at the secondary, you look at the end of this game, and B-Mac touched on it. The defense waned as the game went along, and the Raiders went touchdown, touchdown, field goal. They would have had another touchdown, wound up throwing an interception, and then it was a touchdown.
May I follow up quickly? When you say that, but if Latavius Murray, if you just get signed and you're not part of the team at all, it's hard to know the audibles, when you pick up the blitz, how that works. I mean, that's a tough, that's one of the things that there's a little savvy to know. And that puts him in a bad spot. So you're not criticizing the coaching by saying, why didn't you have Latavius Murray out there? You're saying eventually, when he gets comfortable, he'll be the guy out there.
Because that's the catch-22. And Harbaugh talked about that earlier in the week, where he said, listen, we got to figure out how much Latavius Murray can digest of our playbook. He has been in camp, so he's in football shape. He's ready to go out there and tote the rock. But how much of our offense can he actually execute? That's to be determined. And the longer you play, the more iterations of this of mistakes that could happen. That's what wound up costing the Baltimore Ravens. And then B-Mac made the point, Lamar Jackson with the 2 fumbles. Not only did the Raiders capitalize off of those with touchdowns on both of those fumbles, but of course Lamar Jackson feels that he has to shoulder all the weight on this offense. And that's what happens. It just ultimately caught up to the Ravens as the game went along.
Yeah, your pass protection, you see with rookie running backs. You know, look, last thing that you sort of get in when you're in a new system is the pass protection, and Latavius Murray is there for, an hour and a half before the game, basically. So it would be hard for him to have all those kind of reads. Now, they ultimately lose because they have a broken secondary, a broken play in the secondary, broken missed coverage, something, and Zay Jones runs free and gets the winning touchdown. B-Mac, you played in the secondary, 2-time Super Bowl champ with the Steelers. What did you see on that last play?
They just lined up wrong. One thing you're a coach in the secondary, anytime you're going against an offense that provides a bunch alignment, a tight bunch that's condensed to the line of scrimmage, you got to be on different levels. You have to be on different levels. If you look at that play, Marlon Humphrey is playing the point man, so he's playing bump and run. The other two defenders, they need to be on a different level, and that would allow Marlon Humphrey to have a free flow through the traffic. See, the object when you're going against bunch alignments is to get people to rub off on each other. And when you line up on the same level, that will happen. So based on the personnel and playing football for quite some time, that's something that coaches emphasize. Bunch alignments, especially if you're playing man-to-man, like they were playing man-to-man because they were sending the house, you have to line up on different levels. Allow your point guy to be the guy who's pressing and everyone else back up because you don't want to rub either defender off. And that's what happened. They rubbed each other off, and that's why you saw Marlon Humphrey, a guy who competes to the end. He gave up on the route because he knew from start that he lost the battle because his own player rubbed him off. Those are minor technical issues that many people might not highlight and see instantly, but it led to a huge, huge loss because remember, that was third down. If I'm not mistaken, no, it was second down. It was 2nd and 14. So clearly we all knew the Ravens were going to send pressure to try to remove them out of field goal range. And if they were going to do that, you just needed to cover a little bit longer in the secondary to either allow the pressure to get there or force Carr to throw the football when he wasn't ready to. But he floated, had an open pass catcher. The rest is history.
I know he didn't catch a pass in overtime, and this was a game that will always be remembered for a wild end of regulation overtime. But on his birthday against his old team, Darren Waller looked like the best player on the field. I mean, they threw it to him every play. He was targeted 19 times. He had 10 catches. He had another one that was called back on a penalty that was kind of a phantom penalty. So they basically threw it to him 20 times. We talked at the pregame, nobody throws it to their number one target more in the history of the NFL than John Gruden. He seemed like he was like Waller was on his fantasy team tonight, basically. We were joking. Waller was just a man. What'd you see with him and in that pass game, and can they continue to rely so much on him?
Not as much on Darren Waller, and they're going to have to throttle back just a little bit on that. But in this game, obviously, with Jimmy Smith, a guy who probably would have been covering Darren Waller more than most. You want Marlon Humphrey obviously out there on the outside, so probably would have fallen a little bit more on Jimmy Smith than anyone else out there. He was out, and so they mixed up coverages as we saw throughout the game. It seemed like a different Baltimore Raven was on Darren Waller on each of his targets throughout the game. But, they also had to go to him out of necessity. The Raiders could not establish any sort of ground game until the end of the game when the Ravens really tired out. And Josh Jacobs was dealing with that toe really throughout the game, from the start of the game and then throughout the game. He had to change his cleats. That's going to be one that we're going to have to watch. Kenyon Drake didn't do anything on the ground. He finally got involved in the pass game, and that's what got him going. And then again, when the Ravens tired out, he was able to establish something on the ground. But they went to Darren Waller early and often because they could not get anything established on the ground. That offensive line is something that we're really going to have to take a hard look at there with the Las Vegas Raiders. They were very fortunate that the Baltimore Ravens don't have an even better pass rush because they're going to be facing some really good pass rushes here coming up in the next few weeks. They're going to have to get that shored up. They have a lot of young guys up there, so they went to Waller out of necessity, EK.
And they're not wrong. I mean, he's the best in the world at playing the tight end position, clearly top 2, top 3. And I think you need to give him his targets because 9 times out of 10, he's going to win his battle. I'm surprised the Baltimore Ravens didn't just humble themselves down and say, you know what? We got to devote 2 guys to him. Make somebody else beat us. Now, they did that in the red zone when the field shortened just a bit between Waller and Renfro. But outside of that, you got to find a way to make someone else beat you, especially on third down situations when you know Carr is looking for Waller. So just a lack of adjustments for me was a bit mind-boggling because we all knew who the number 1 guy was, right? Make some of these other young pass catchers beat you, and they decided to not. And this man had over 100 yards and 1 touchdown, could have had more. I'm just happy I didn't play against him this week in fantasy.
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Lost, by the way, on the touchdown at the end of regulation. That's how bad it was for me. Thank you. I mean, why don't you just throw it to him again, John Gruden? Like that was a death by 1,000 cuts from a fantasy perspective. There you go. If you're now looking at these 2 teams, so this is a game that could have gone either way, right? It always feels like when you win, like you played better than you did, and when you lose, like you played worse. But this was really could have gone either way. It was a play here, a play there. Do you feel differently about either team going forward, B-Mac, than you did when you woke up this morning?
Well, let's start with the Raiders. The Raiders have improved on the defensive side of the football, primarily with their pass rush. Max Crosby, he's a Tasmanian devil. I mean, he's never tired. He's always playing with maximum energy, and he can be a difference maker on the defensive line, and he is the lead singer for their group, and he understands his role. Offensively, Derek Carr put the team on his arm, not his shoulder, on his arm, and he led them to victory. A night where the running game was non-existent, he was able to lead them to victory, him and Waller and the rest of the pass catchers. Now, when you transition to the Baltimore Ravens, a team that many people felt like was a playoff caliber team, some people felt like they were a team that could win their division in the AFC North, they have some issues outside of the injuries. We knew it was going to be a very, very difficult task for them to be able to overcome so many injuries, especially in the backfield. But outside of that, that right side of that offensive line is an issue. They need to be concerned about the right side of the offensive line because Max Crosby made the Pro Bowl tonight on their right side. So if they don't find a way to help the right tackle with a back or a tight end, it's going to be a long season for Lamar Jackson. And outside of that, the same concerns we've had with the Baltimore Ravens offensively since Lamar Jackson became the starting quarterback. They don't have a number one guy, number one wide receiver. And a night when Andrews was a bit quiet, they didn't have a reliable wide receiver he can turn to in critical moments. And I can tell you this much, they should have still won this ball game. But guess who they have next week? Kansas City, Sunday Night Football. You don't want to go 0-2 if you have playoff aspirations, better yet championship aspirations, because it can get a bit difficult if you start the season off 0-2. But let's see if they can kind of right their wrongs because they have some holes they need to fill, and they need to answer those questions extremely fast.
Yeah, B-Mac handled the Ravens, so I'll focus on the Raiders, and I touched on that offensive line. There are certainly questions for the Ravens and their offensive line on the right side. There are questions for the Raiders and their offensive line. Alex Leatherwood played a very, very sloppy game, the rookie right tackle. There was some miscommunication between Derek Carr and his rookie center. I thought that everyone else mostly played well, but they did not have a good day run blocking. We know that the Ravens are a better run-stopping team than they are a pass-rushing team, but they're going to have to figure it out because they're playing some really good pass-rushing teams coming up. They have the Steelers and then the Dolphins and then the Chargers. All three of those teams are better at pass rushing than the one we saw today hailing from Baltimore. As far as the defense goes, I mean, listen, Max Crosby, you mentioned it, B-Mac. This is a guy who didn't stop, who had that motor going, probably could have had 5 or 6 sacks on a quarterback if he were not playing Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, one of those two quarterbacks tonight. So I really liked what I saw from the Raiders. I thought that they had a really good chance of winning this game. I had the Raiders on the money line just for the simple fact that the Ravens, their injuries were going to catch up to them, and that obviously bared out. I don't know if I'm going to take the Raiders in any of the next 3 games because of how poorly their offensive line matches up with the pass rush. They need to get out on the practice field, figure out their communication. Alex Leatherwood needs to be better disciplined, but that's only going to come with reps in the NFL. You cannot simulate that out there on the practice field. So I don't think the Raiders are off to 1-0. Now they're going to be 4-0. They're still going to need to congeal a little bit here over the next couple of weeks.
All right, for the first time in 6 years, the Ravens don't start 1-0. For the first time. They were 5-0 and had covered all 5. They've been very good week 1. But the Raiders are very, very good in prime time. They're now 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 primetime games. Speaking of against the number, it doesn't get any better than that.
Would you look at it?
There you go. Let's let that wash over you. How's that going down? You just play with us, you don't lose. It's as simple as that. I'll put this group against any group on any show anywhere in the world. Facts. That's what it is. The beauty of our business is, anybody, your uncle, whatever, oh, that was an easy bet. Everybody knew that. No, everyone didn't know it. We keep score because it's win, 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 win. Now I'm going to show you everybody who lost. Oh, wait, nobody lost.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.